The gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentlewoman from Michigan, Ms. Tlaib, for 5 minutes.
So thank you so much for being here. I cannot express to you, Mr. Jenkins, how much the spirit of late Chairman, our forever Chairman, Congressman Elijah Cummings' spirit in being effective and efficient. I think you've helped make sure that happens as the line of questions come towards you. In the spirit of what Mother Nash has said, is how do we uncomplicate something that should just be pretty simple? And I think you've been reiterating the importance of we're a democracy, it's in the Constitution and so forth. Just for it's simple for folks to know, I mean, the right to vote is guaranteed by the Constitution. Congress has clear authority to investigate any level of government, to try to push back on any infringement on that right. So in spirit of simplifying this, as Mother Nash has asked us to do you think, what do you think these folks, which I will call oppressors, what do you think these folks are really, truly afraid of? Let's just talk about it. I think it needs to be out in the open. Why are they so afraid of us, people like us, voting? Mr. Jenkins.
I think basically it's a reflection on the history of America. Mm-hmm. As I pointed out in my remarks, when they talked about we, the people of the United States, and then excluded women, excluded indigenous populations, excluded poor people, they were making a definition of democracy that was only for themselves. And one of the things that I think we have to raise over and over again is that many of the institutions that were created under that mentality are affecting us in a disadvantaged way today. I mentioned the Electoral College. The Electoral College is a barb on the whole face of democracy in the United States. Because what it says is that people's real estate is more important than their lives.
Yep, that's right.
And it's to balance imbalance the whole system so that people who come from states with a handful of population have the same votes as people who come from states that have millions of people. That is a perversion of democracy. And I noted that after the remarks that were made about the Electoral College, not one question was raised about the Electoral College or the defense of it or a criticism of it. But that's fundamental. And we got to be able to deal with basic issues, not superficial issues. Chasing rabbits is not what the Congress should be doing.
Thank you. What are they afraid of? Okay, they're afraid. They don't want us to dismantle the Electoral College, which basically, protected landowners, protected that kind of classism that was going on in that form of oppression. But what, in your opinion, from the work that you've been doing and looking at all this form of oppression and making sure that it's harder for folks that look like us to vote?
So. Now, what I would say and what I've seen in my work is that, as Mr. Jenkins alluded to, our democracy was not founded with the idea that all eligible voters would have access to the polls. And what we're seeing now is that there are attempts, as the Voting Rights Act gives life to the 15th Amendment and broadens those who are allowed to vote, we're seeing both the challenge of our democracy not having or making the resources available to ensure when there's robust turnout that everyone has access to the ballot. And then we're also seeing laws that are being passed that affect certain types of voters. And, there's been this argument that there's been robust turnout, but it's robust turnout in spite of. We saw the video of the long lines. That's a lot of burden on voters to have their voice heard. No voter should have to wait in hours-long lines in order to have their voice heard. And even if there's, robust turnout, there are those individual voters, the voters that I care about, who are not having the opportunity to vote when they try to engage in the franchise. And those are the voters that laws like the Voting Rights Act want to protect.
I only have a few seconds, Mother Nash, I don't want you to get cut off, so would love to hear about this. I mean, you know, having Election Day be a national holiday, I think is important conversation. Getting rid of the Electoral College is an important conversation. Talking about no reason absentees, so we don't see these long lines, is an important conversation. It should be easy to be able to vote here as an American citizen. But if, with last words of wisdom to all of us, and really getting back to the simplifying, what are they afraid of? Why don't they want us to vote?
Congresswoman Tlaib, I think we have to realize that this country was founded on genocide against Native Americans, and then slavery was an extremely fundamental institution in our history. The country has never confronted those facts directly and officially recognized those as at least mistakes, and done what is possible to do to make restitution. I think that as a result, white supremacy is still very much with this society. I think we look on the value of lives of Europeans and white Americans and Australians and maybe Israelis as much more valuable than the lives of people who are Asian, African, and Latin American. We have to confront that directly, I think. I think more particularly ordinary citizens who are white need to confront racist white people. There is a fantasy on the part of many whites where they, think of themselves as Scarlett O'Hara's, wealthy white plantation owners that subjects people of color. The President of the United States recently, while saying he welcomed people from Norway, that he mentioned immigrants from colored countries as S-hole countries. And, we have to, I think, confront this kind of attitude across the board, definitely. And I think that in the South, particularly during the Civil Rights Movement, white people were afraid that if we got power, we'd do them like they had done us. And there was a lot of fear around that. Well, that didn't happen. But there is something to karma that people know when they have mistreated people over a period of time, then they become afraid of them if they have equal power.
Okay, thank you.
I think that there's a real emotional illness around race in this country.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. The gentlewoman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes Mr. Armstrong for a unanimous consent request.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to unanimous request to enter two articles into the record. One is from the